background noise going on then.
Kit, would you be able to put yourself on mute, please? Okay, I think, Suzanne, we are ready to start. Are we being recorded now? You're set to go. Okay, so welcome everybody, councillors and members of the public who are attending this meeting of FAR. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, this meeting has been held via audio-video conference as elected members and members of the public are not permitted to be physically present. All members participating via video conference will count for the purpose of the meeting quorum in accordance with clause 25B of Schedule 7 to the Local Government Act 2002. The meeting has been live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel. Can I ask all councillors and any members of the public who are attending to turn their telephones on to mute and keep themselves on mute. And if you have a question, if you push the hands up button or hold up your hands. As this is a Zoom conference, we'll take a 5-minute break at the end of each hour, if that's acceptable with everyone. So firstly, moving to the agenda A1, so we have no apologies to confirm today. A2, conflicts of interest. Can I ask if anybody, sorry, well, there's no apologies to accept. So,
apologise for Ross, please.
Okay, thank you, Garrick. So there's an apology from Ross, and can I please have someone to accept that apology? Thank you, Alex. And all in favour? Put your hands up. Thank you, that's passed. So moving on to A2, does anyone have any conflicts of interest today? No? So just put your hands up if you don't have any conflicts of interest, just so I can be clear. Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. A3, public participation. So there's been no public participation notified for today, and therefore under A4 we have no actions from public participation. Right, so I'd just like to go on to A5, the minutes for confirmation. Now, does anybody have any comments regarding the minutes from the 11th of August? No comments? I just had one, which was a question for Katrina under A5. Point 6, and you said you noted the communication allowance, and I'm also assuming the pay increase will be paid monthly from August 21. So when I looked back at the paper that was presented on the 11th and looking at the RA, it did say this should be from the beginning of July, so the beginning of the financial year. So can you just confirm that it should be from the 1st of July or as distinct from August, which was put in this paper?
Yes, it is July, 1st of July.
Okay, then. And so all of that would be backdated. So that that's an amendment under A5.6. So it should say 1st of July 2021, not August. Okay. Does anybody else have any comments regarding the minutes? No? Okay, so I'd like to move that, subject to that change, the minutes be accepted. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Brenda. So all in favour, raise your hand. Thank you. Right. And the next part is to go on to the corporate services report, which is B1, and that's pages 8 to 21. Just like to make some general comments around this. I was disappointed about the lack of detail and also the fact that we had no summary or highlights, and also that I don't quite understand why we had no budget attached to the July-August accounts. So it's very hard to actually get a clear picture of what's going on. I would have thought that the spreadsheets automatically included the budgets, so you could see where we're up versus budget. But let's go through today. But I feel that we're in a difficult position to be able to sort of make any commentary around the finances, given that we haven't had those highlights or budget, where we're at versus budget. But let's see where we go. Maybe you can give us an overview, Katrina, and then I'll take any comments from any other councillors regarding this. So Katrina, would you like to go through these highlights?
Certainly. So the reason that we didn't upload the budget figures was because of the discussions that the councillors are still having over the long-term plan and the current year's budgets. So it's actually not a simple process to upload them into the system. It takes many hours of work. So if we're going to make any changes to it, then it's quite a difficult process. So that's why there's no budget figures for the first 2 months.
Okay, and with regard to summary or highlights,
because it's the first 2 months of the year, it's and we don't have budget figures in there. There's nothing at this early stage in the year to really report. There's nothing of any note that would need to be raised at this early stage of the financial year, and we simply are prioritising the auditors at the moment and didn't have the resources to be able to finalise that.
So just in terms of how so we're now October, how you can look back at that first quarter and just have some, even allowing for the fact there may be some adjustments to budget, how can you look at the first quarter and just see where we're tracking?
Well, we will be able to, because the next the first quarter doesn't end until the 30th September. And these reports don't go up to the 30th September. So at the next VAR meeting, there will be a full report on the Q1 results. So
do you have any sense of where we're tracking at all?
No, not at this stage. It's only the 6th of October, so no, I don't.
Okay. Does anybody else want to make any comments, or do you want Katrina to talk through these results, or if you put your hand up if you want to make some comments? Yep, Garrett, go ahead.
Yes, Katrina, just on page 8, you talk about the audit going through to the 27th of October meeting. Is that looking good, or are you guys under a fair bit of stress at the moment?
No, it's not. It's it looks like we're going to be pushing it out to the 4th of November. I think it is. It might be the 7th. The council meeting either on the 4th or the 7th. Sorry, I'm not sure which it is. Indications from audit are still on track for the 27th, but unlikely. I think we'd be better off to push it out to that next council meeting on the 4th of November, just to give us a little bit more time, or audit a little bit more time to finalise it, because it's generally driven by audit's capability to finalise it and not so much by ours.
Okay, I agree with you. I'd rather have real data a couple of weeks later than half the data early. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think we always historically we've been quite rushed to get the statements finalised by the 31st of October, because we generally are in the back end of the audit cycle for doing audits. So our audit is always quite late anyway. They're just starting it this week. And so they give themselves very short timeframes for us anyway. Historically, we were required to adopt the annual report by the 31st of October, but that has been changed in light of COVID. So we've still got until the 31st of December to be able to formally adopt it. So I think it would be a good idea to actually push that out a week or a few days, just to give you all time to review the annual report before it needs adopting as well.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Thank you. Any other questions? Pam?
Brenda had her hand up before me, Lee.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brenda. Sorry, I'm trying to look at all the screen. Go ahead, Brenda.
That's cool. Are we saying that we'll get to review the financial report prior to it going to our next meeting? And if we do miss that, is there an opportunity to have an extraordinary meeting for FAR to review that information before it goes before council?
So the normal process is that the annual report doesn't come to FAR before it's adopted. But because once we get the sign off from audit, then there's no reason why all councillors couldn't see the annual report for review.
Okay, that was about the audit report. I'm talking about the financial side of that report.
Well, that is
okay.
The whole document includes the sign off by the auditors, but also the financial statements.
Okay, well, it's just out there for a suggestion. Thanks.
So, Brenda, just to clarify, that's for the previous financial year, not anything to do with the current financial year. Yep. Okay, thanks, Brenda. Pam?
Katrina, just in your report, could I just clarify a couple of things, please? You've under your on page 2, which is the investments, you've got the clause, but you've forgotten the number. So that's clause 2, isn't it? That should be in there for the investments. Comes under clause 2 of the investment policy.
Yes, I believe it does, Pam. Sorry, I had missed that. Yes, I'm sure it's for clause 2.
Cool. Thank you. And the other thing is, when we get down to the rate arrears, just a little bit concerned about we're under the one that says prior years rates have decreased, and then you've got your graph, and then you say total rates outstanding have increased by 643,000.
Yeah.
Which is from the same month. And then you go on to say outstanding rates were 963k in August 21 to 320k in August 2020. This is mainly due to the increase in direct debits. Are you saying that the increase in direct debits is causing a greater outstanding amount of rates?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. We can either discuss that now, or we can discuss it when, if everyone's finished with the financial statements, I'm happy to move on to the rates.
No, I think let's just answer that question, because I've got a few other questions. I had the same question, Pam. Is that a reflection of the fact that some rates are on a fortnightly cycle or a monthly cycle?
Yeah. So some rates are weekly, some are fortnightly, some are monthly, some are quarterly. Because we've had a larger uptake in the amount of direct debits, what that means is that at the end of August, those people that are on direct debits haven't paid their full instalment, because they might be paying weekly or fortnightly. So that's what has increased the amount that's overdue. But I think the important thing to note is, well, I think the more important thing to note is the graph further down, which actually shows the number of rateable properties that haven't with outstanding rates. So that's people who aren't on a direct debit or a payment plan. So they're properties that are not paying their rates, and that's, I think, more of an indication than dollar amount so much.
Okay, thank you for that. I understand that better now. And then in that same paragraph, you say there is currently 39% for rateable properties. I think that's meant to be of rateable properties.
Yeah.
And what else did I have in there? Then under the financial performance, looking at the statement of financial performance for the 30th of May, I know that's in arrears. What I didn't understand was the actual last year on internal interest loans was 19,221. Then we had, and then the actual was 19,164 for the May one, but we had a budget in there of 129,140. What is the difference? Why are we so far behind in that?
So that was there's an extra, I think, $100,000 in that line of the budget, and it actually refers back up to the rates penalty line. So it's actually it was an account that was misappropriated, and we should have recoded that budget. So 100,000 of that should actually sit up at the second line down. So the rates penalty was budgeted at 220,000. So yeah, so apologies there. I can make that adjustment. I thought Charlie had made it and I hadn't picked that up.
Yeah, no, that's right. I understand that now. And then in that same section, you've got miscellaneous income. We've got $1 million, but we only had a budget for 262. What's created
that's
that?
the mayoral task force for funding.
Oh, okay. Task force for jobs funding, is it? Okay, cool.
Because of course that wasn't budgeted.
Yeah, no, that's good. Good to have an answer for that. I think, apart from not having the budgets in, which you've already answered. Then what was that? Oh, when you come down for the period ending the 31st of August, in that operating income, you've got grants, donations and subsidies. You've got 410,000 in there. What makes up that?
Once again, that's another instalment of the I think actually Charlie's probably, I'll have to come back. I'll come back to you next quarter on that. Actually, I'm actually not sure. I could send you an email and let you know what that is, Pam, if you like.
That would be really great.
It will be, I'm pretty sure it will be the next instalment for the Mayoral's Task Force.
Okay.
Which I think was 375,000 or something, but I can come back to you on that.
Okay, and then I think this probably the last piece is under this, on that same page, under operating expenditure, you've got economic, cultural and community development. You've got 292 odd thousand there.
Sorry. Oh, right there. Yeah, and I think that's the expenditure that offsets it. It's either to do with the Mayoral Task Force or the Provincial Growth Fund, and getting those sort of wrapped up. But it's either one of those or the other. So I'll be able to. I can come back if you want. I'll come back to you on that. Otherwise, I can report it at next far.
Yeah, no. If you come back, that's great. And then, one last question. Under the last, or almost the last piece, you've got summary of investments. Right down the bottom of that, you've got forestry.
Yep.
Your forestry, and then you've got your shares. Now, I understand that we keep the shares at the same figure. Why do we keep the forestry at the same figure all the time? Surely that would have appreciated in value.
Historically, we haven't valued our forestry because it's so low and it's only small pockets. we can have a discussion with Audit to think whether it's appropriate or not. We have bought the carbon credits in this year, which you'll see in the year-end financial figures, because that's become a material amount. But yeah, it's just a historic thing. We haven't seen the need, because it's only such a small amount of forestry to actually value it.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Great, thanks, Pam. Katrina, when you get back on those issues, can you just share it with all of us rather than waiting for the next FAR meeting, please?
Certainly.
Yeah.
Thanks, thanks, Katrina.
Sorry, Brenda, did you have a question? No. So I've just got a question around, firstly, if you just look at the big picture, Katrina, are there any surprises in any of the line items that you would have concerns about in
terms of this financial year or last financial year?
So I'm thinking about August and July, just any items that might strike you as being way out of kilter, or
no, not really. There is in the July statements, you'll see that governance is actually showing a negative figure. That is just a timing issue with a journal that needs to be reversed and has been fixed in the August accounts. Apart from that, no, there's nothing specifically that is of concern to me at this early stage in the year.
Okay, and then thinking about income, just the same sort of question, is any big surprises there that you would...
No, there's not a lot in income at this stage. Contributions are, I guess, higher than we had thought they would be. I think the budget for contributions for the financial year is just a little under $2 million. So to already be at 800,000 is pleasing. Financial contributions from developers is always very difficult to budget for and to anticipate. Because it really is it's a timing thing of when the 224C is finally signed off and the developer needs to physically pay the contributions, and there can be delays for all sorts of things. So it's quite difficult to get that budget line right and that timing right, but we generally take quite a reasonably conservative approach to financial contributions, because they do all go straight into the reserves anyway. But yeah, I mean, that's pleasing, but yeah, it's literally just the fact that a developer has one of the larger developments has been settled for their financial contributions.
And yeah, I know it's always tricky that, particularly if there's delays in the whole process, and you don't get any contributions until after titles are
available.
Is it the following financial year, I think? Or
no. As soon as the financial, as soon as the titles are available, then the developer needs to pay the contributions before those titles will be released, I think.
Look, this is just a rather minor, but internal interest loans, what does that relate to?
So this actually relates to roading loans, and it's a way that some councils use a mechanism to effectively they borrow from themselves, and these are both of these loans will be paid off at the end of this current financial year. I think that's right. There's very little on them, about $100,000. So effectively, we borrowed out of our own cash flow to pay for roading, and I think it was an emergency works roading. And this sort of links back to the discussions we've had previously around the Rural Roading Reserve. So there wasn't any funds in the Rural Roading Reserve at the time, so council had to borrow, and they decided they had enough cash flow to be able to borrow internally. So it's a legitimate way of borrowing. Some councils, they only do internal borrowing, but what that means is we actually have to pay a market interest rate to ourselves or to our ratepayers. So that's sort of the tail end of that loan.
How far back does that go?
Quite some years. I think it's about 8 or 9 years.
And presumably that would have been at quite a high interest rate.
No, the interest rates changes each year because we have to charge ourselves market interest rate.
Okay. Sorry, Alex, did you have a question? No. Okay. Okay. So, when will you be in a position to give clear analysis on this first quarter by the next FAR meeting?
Absolutely. Yes.
And that would come with the summary and highlights, etc. Yeah. So I've got a further question around reserves. I'm sort of trying to, I'd like to have a better fix on the reserves. And I'm wondering if it's possible to have a list of the reserves and where our spenders versus the reserves, particularly bearing in mind cash flow. Because when we have, for example, the recent unbudgeted pedestrian crossing situation at Five Rivers, that was unbudgeted for the tune of 225,000. But unless you have a sort of eyes on the reserves, it's difficult to sort of put it in perspective, and also the impact that might have on our cash flow, and particularly with interest rates potentially going up, that will also have an impact.
Sorry, Lee, what's the impact on the interest rates going up?
Well, if interest rates go up, then obviously that has an impact on our cash flow. Because
we'll be earning more interest.
Yeah, exactly. So,
okay.
But I know that Pam, you had some thoughts. Do you want to expand on the sort of information you might like out of the reserves?
Yeah, Katrina, if it's at all possible, could we have like a balance as at the 30th of June, and then what has gone in and what has gone out of each of the reserves, so that we can get an idea, because I'm concerned that the reserves are our cash flow, and the more we piecemeal take something out of those reserves, or we plan to take things out of those reserves, then that reduces the amount that you've got for everyday working of the council's accounts. So if we could have the balance to start off with being the beginning of the year, and then what's planned to come out at a certain time, or what has come out because we've unbudgeted something and taken those out of one of the different reserves. So that would be really good to have. Then we can have a balance of those and keep track of them.
Okay, I will put something together. I think my initial thoughts are it will be based on the opening balance, obviously, from the 1st of July, but then the year one of the long-term plan will be what is budgeted to come out of that. And then any extraordinary items we'll highlight. Does that sound sensible?
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you.
So, sorry, Katrina, so when you say extraordinary items, that would mean any unbudgeted items that you...
Correct, and they all need to be approved, obviously, prior. Yeah.
Okay. Is everybody happy with having that further information on reserves? All okay. So just moving on, does anybody else have any further questions around this? No? Hang a minute. Sorry, be with me. I should have done this at the beginning. So can I have someone to move that we receive the corporate services report? Thank you, Brenda, and seconded by Pam. And all in favour, raise your hands. And Katrina, you...
Sorry, I wasn't raising my hand to vote. I'm just about to text Sheil because she would like to be come onto the Zoom session to talk about the policy and governance report, which I believe is up next. So I'll just flick her a short text.
Okay, excellent. Would you like to wait until she arrives?
No, I don't think so. I think she'll only be a couple of minutes, and I think we can go on. She is specifically just wants to be there in case you've got any questions around the media request part of the report.
Right. So just bear with me for a second. Right. We haven't got Karen here with us.
No, we haven't.
No.
But I'm happy to. Karen's delegated me to present her report for her.
Great.
I can answer any questions as well.
And Harry's here as well. Yeah.
So in the first instance, I'd just like to ask someone to receive the policy and governance report. This is item B2. Thank you, Pam, and seconded by Alex, and all in favour, raise your hands. Thank you. Right. So either Katrina or Sheil, if you want to talk us through this, please, or make any comments or observations.
It's probably easy to open up for comments. Well, I think if we have a look at the official information part of the report, and it's probably easier to then come back to the strategic risk register if you'd like to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to open it up to questions. We included the media requests in here. It's the first time that we have started keeping a track of how many media requests we get in. Is Sheil on there? Yeah, so that we can just keep a track of where we are, because they do obviously take up quite a lot of time for us. Oh, hello, Sheil. So if you've got any questions around the media stuff, Sheil's here to help you.
Alex.
Thanks. Sheil, I know it's hard if this is the first time you've reported it, but whether you've been tracking, is this a significant increase in media inquiries compared to previous what you may have on file in the past?
Thank you for the question. I understand that we haven't kept records of this nature in previous years. However, anecdotally, it does indicate that we have a significantly higher level of questions this year than we may have had in the past. From the data that we've recorded since June of this year, we can see that in comparison to last year or previously, where we might have had 4 to 5 inquiries a week, we are on average in a slow week getting 1 or 2 inquiries a day, and between 4 and 6 inquiries a day during a busy week.
Sorry, Kit, did you have a question as well?
Hi, Sheil. The 142 figure for the Wairarapa Times Age, what's that all about? Is that response to the letter that was put in the paper?
So there's quite a wide range of topics. There are probably maybe a quarter or so that relate to rates in general, including anything we might have posted in the newspapers. The next most common topic would be innovating streets. There's a few on Henakura Road, quite a few on weather-related issues such as flooding or road closures, coastal, etc. So it's quite a wide range of topics.
Okay, thanks.
Sheil, just a question for you. Are you capturing in some way social media as well? Do you note that anywhere, or is it?
We don't capture that. only because it's just not physically possible to try and do that. There are software available like Hootsuite that we could use. However, that is unbudgeted at this stage, and we're not planning to implement that just yet.
Okay. Pam, you had a question?
Yeah, Shell, I just wanted to say that those figures are mind-blowing, because that is almost taking up your whole day without or your whole weeks without anything else that you have to do. And is there a way of tracking the in inquiries and the out, like the inquiries in, especially like from the Times Age, and then tracking the things that we publish in the Times Age, so that we get an idea of how many incoming inquiries they're doing, and then how much we're actually publishing in the paper?
There is a way to do that. It is a very manual process, and I guess I'd be curious to understand how that information would be useful, because of the amount of time that it'll take for us to do that.
Yeah, I thought that it might be useful to know if the inquiries from the Times Age are related from things that they've picked up from our minutes, or whether it's things that the public have asked them to investigate, as opposed to the things like we put in about rate notices, or the Alex's report in the Times Age, and the regular things that we submit to the Times Age. I was trying to get a handle on that. Yeah.
Lee, could I just comment on that? I think, Shield, the number, the 142, are all inquiries from the media, from the Wairarapa Times Age. They're not things that we have proactively published. Is that correct?
They're inquiries, although some of them may have been triggered by something that we've published. And I guess that's what Pam's trying to, or Councillor Calenza is trying to understand, is what's been the trigger for these inquiries. Going forward, we can add an extra column in the data that we're collecting to identify what's triggered it, if that's helpful.
That would be really great if it's not too much work. I don't want to create another concern for you, but yeah, just even if it's for 1 month, so we get an idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just a brief comment on that, Pam, and I can see you, Garrett. It's a question of what we do with the information and balancing that against Shield's already very large workload. So anyway, let's see how we go with that. There has been, and anybody who subscribes to the Times Age knows it's been an extraordinarily large amount of press commentary about SW. Garrett,
if it's not possible, then just don't do it. Yeah,
that would be, I think, a balance for Shield and Harry to work out, I guess.
Thank you.
Garrett.
Yes, Sheila, just a quick one. Do you liaise with your colleagues from Marsden and Carlton to see if the volumes are similar there, or are ours sort of out of kilter, as has been suggested?
I do liaise with them. I understand that they've also had their peaks and troughs depending on what is topical within their region. We haven't compared specific numbers, but we have discussed in general terms.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Brenda.
I suppose just as a level of comment, 142 shows a level of engagement with the public. At least they're actually asking questions of the council to ensure that the information they're giving to the public is as accurate as possible. So I don't see it as a bad thing.
Thank you, Brenda. It's interesting, just on that note, the level of engagement and interest in Three Waters. So, you can say that's a good thing. Does anybody else have any other questions regarding media for Shield? No? Okay, so what we're going to do now is move backwards to number 2, the strategic risk register. So maybe Harry, would you like to make any initial comments before we dive into this?
Yep. So you recall, so the purpose of the strategic risk register is to those things that are governance issues and are worth, as opposed to operating decisions. So so this is the higher level. You also have the operating risk register, just to give you assurance that ELT are regularly reviewing our operating risks, and which we do on a regular cycle, and keep that updated. In fact, it's a standing agenda item. We have risk identified, so that we can keep that regularly updated. And most importantly, it's not identifying the risks, the mitigation that we're going to take to try and offset some of those things. So there's a few updates in the strategic risk register. They're highlighted in red. So as things have changed, or there are different parties that we need to engage in. So if you take climate change as an example, the Regional Leadership Committee has now been established. And so we're recognising that they have a role to assist in managing that risk, as it's much wider than just simply our council. In the risk around governance failure, so we're just for completeness, we're highlighting that it's not just around the council itself, it's also community boards. So that's just making sure that we have good alignment with our community boards in terms of direction for council. If we are unaligned, that is a risk. On the government reform, you see we've highlighted the recent mitigation in terms of raising our concerns with the Department of Internal Affairs. That letter's been sent. We will be formally tabling that at the next council meeting, probably the 4th of November, the special council meeting. So that's on the public record, other than because the one we initially had the discussions around didn't include the full detail that was sent through to DIA, but it is on our website. It's not something we're trying to, we want the public to understand the concerns that you are raising and have raised, which simply reflect the risk that actually what most of New Zealand seems to have achieved. Turning over the page. So the Emergency Operating Centre, this time, and I'm very pleased, we've actually been able to provide good level of staffing to support the EOC, which is over and above, of course, what people do on a day-to-day basis. So I think that mitigation has helped us minimise the risk of our council particularly being able to respond in a disaster event. 2 ways. One, it means that we have people who can help the regional response, but it also means we have staff who are now trained should we have a local response. That was the one that was keeping me awake, as if we had a localised flooding or event or an earthquake, having sufficient staff on site who can actually respond to those issues. Next one, cybersecurity. That is something we do need to really keep an eye on. So fibre is being installed into this office in the next few days, which again will give us an opportunity to have a better pipeline for information. Operational service, Sheil, and I do want to note that we are improving our information to residents in terms of events. I think Hinakura Road is a good example of that, where we would have traditionally used emails and push. We set up regular communication with the affected residents on almost what it was a daily basis for a number of times. So more localised and targeted response to issues. And the new risk that we're highlighting is communications failure. So making sure that we are being vigilant on the way that we communicate and engage with our communities. I think that's a risk that you need to keep an eye on. We had a discussion just earlier about the it's a pipeline issue as much as anything else. We only have 2 communication staff. Given the number of media inquiries, and remember with the media inquiries, it's not just Sheila and Catherine's time, it's also all staff who actually provide the content and the verification, the check to make sure the information that we send is correct. So that level of media interest really consumes a huge amount of time of the organisation. That means that there's a risk that we're not focusing on the proactive side of telling our story. So those are the main points. Does anyone have any questions or questions of clarification?
Kit.
Oh, Harry.
Yep.
Who and how do you determine whether it's extreme, high, moderate?
Well, it's a judgment, I think, Kit. And it all goes back to your guidance as governors as well. So if you think that we've the rating that we've provided is overstating it, remember that there's the difference between the rating of the nature of the risk versus the mitigation. Yeah. So you can have something that may be a high risk, but and what you can actually do about it is actually quite low. So it's a balance of it's not just identifying the risk, it's actually what are we doing about it, and is there things we could do more?
Yeah, okay. The reason I ask is that I think there's 3 here that it's like if you make it to the strategic risk register, it's extreme. But I understand what you're saying about mitigation and so, but there's governance failure from a FAR perspective. I mean, that's in effect what we are. Yeah. And the first part of the risk and impact is the risk involves a failure to implement council strategic direction. Wow. And if that's the case, that's got to be extreme from our perspective. Now, what you can do about it is your normal day-to-day work, I would imagine. But I think that's something that affects the FAR committee quite dramatically. So there was that one. There was the staff engagement survey the people safety and well-being, and the new one, the communication failure. They're massive as far as I'm concerned. And so anyway, look, I just put it there to say that it's interesting how you do it, and I do understand the risk against mitigation, but specifically the governance one is what we're about.
Thank you, Kit. Alex.
Yeah, and Kit, I agree with you, though I would suspect, and Harry, correct me if I'm wrong, that these are all risks that would be present at a similar level in any council in New Zealand, and certainly, when you look at the likes of a disaster, the risk is always going to be high because we live in an earthquake zone and a flood zone, and we've got climate change occurring. So I suppose it'd be really interesting to assess these as into what is practical to be able to be done about mitigating the risk, or are they always going to be at high level and the same for every single council in New Zealand?
Yes, just to answer your first question, they would be very similar to any council in New Zealand, but they are strategic risks, so that by nature. So if you take an example of governance, where that risk manifests itself when this council is unable to pass resolutions or is unable to obtain a majority to make decisions, and that plays out where the Minister of Local Government would intervene and appoint commissioners, and so it does happen. That's the thing that you are watching from a governance perspective. So there's ability literally to make decisions to implement the things that you've set down in your long-term plan. So it's not just governance per se, that there are specific things, a sequence of events that you could lead you to a place where council is just simply unable to work and operate, but it can't make decisions.
Great, thanks for clarifying that. Brenda, you had a comment.
My concern around the communications failure and the commentary that's actually contained on the report is that the report is actually effectively addressing potential disaster events that could happen. It doesn't actually address our need on how we improve our communication process with regards to engaging with our communities. So how can we effectively do that is what I'm asking, and how does this get addressed?
So the mitigation that's in that commentary is develop a communication strategy, and a part of that would be an engagement strategy. And so that's the mitigation that we're working on, and Sheila is leading that piece of work. It's referenced here, and so FAR's role is to make sure that that work progresses, because that's a critical action to mitigate the effect of the risk.
Thanks, Brenda. Harry, can I ask about the timing around that? Or is that a Sheila question?
But we were just discussing that this morning. Yes, it's literally timing as we go. I mean, Sheila's working on it. If she ever gets breathing space, well, actually she's had a few days without media inquiries, then it's something we can progress quicker rather than later.
I've got just a comment on my own observation. Just going back, I understand what you were saying earlier about what you can do about a problem or a risk, but I believe the communication should be moved up to a high level of risk, because at the moment in the community, on a daily basis, I'm certainly getting feedback that communication's poor or not enough of it. And I understand all the, the pressure of work, especially if you just look at that one figure of the number of times age inquiries. But I just would like to see that moved up the list so that we can ensure that it's a real priority for us.
We certainly do that. And we didn't put these in they're not in a particular hierarchy, so we can easily put them in an order that draws your attention to them more regularly. Yeah.
More is so, in my view, and this is just a personal view, I see it as a high risk, that area, particularly with all the current commentary around what council are and aren't doing. The other one I wondered, and I'd just seek advice from maybe Alex or Harry on this one, whether another risk should be reputational risk as a strategic risk, or is that covered elsewhere under governance? Or
I mean, every council has reputation risk, so it's what's the actual outcome of that risk, I think is the question. So if the public lose confidence as council is making bad decisions, and remember that's a judgment. So the mitigation for those types of things is transparency. It's making sure the reports are robust, have all the relevant information. Just because people don't like the decision, and that could be seen as creating a reputation, which is a really hard one to actually nail down. I mean, yeah, I mean, it is tied. It's inextricably tied up to governance. But the main thing is to step into the are we making good decisions based on the information? Are you being provided the correct advice? Are you getting the information that's relevant to the decision you have to make? And that's just normal council process. Often reputation is around a group of people who disagree with the decision, and so it's not necessarily the quality of the information that was actually provided to make the decision. So look, it's a hard one, Lee.
That's exactly why I was asking, because where it falls. Thank you for that. Kit, did you want to make a comment on that?
Just that reputational is on the operating schedule.
Yeah.
And I think that's worthy of a little bit more discussion at the appropriate time.
Yeah.
And I mean, also, Lee, I agree with lifting that risk, but we'd like to see a report so that we can actually make a decision based on actual data, wherever possible, as opposed to hearsay.
Yep. Were you referring to the comms?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Excellent. Pam, did you have anything to comment on?
No, nothing on that. Thank you.
Garrick, have any other comments you want to make?
No, it's just the ranking that we're going to talk about that with the next phase. That's fine. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Thanks very much. Look, we're about to move into the next section, which is publicly excluded. So with everybody's permission, what I'm going to suggest is that we take I'm terrible. So we've got B3, action item report. So we'll move on to B3. I'm very sorry. So I'd like to recommend that we receive the finance, audit and risk action item report. Can I just see seconder for that? Thank you, Alex. All in favour, raise your hands. Yeah, Brenda, thank you. So that is passed. Right. Harry or Katrina, do you want to make any comments, or shall I just seek clarification or questions from councillors?
I think just if there's any questions you'd like us to respond to.
Great.
On the risk register.
Okay. Alex, sorry.
Yeah, I'm just on, oh gosh, is there a number attached to that? The one regarding the 16th of June 21 regarding destination Wairarapa and subscription databases. Have we had a discussion with DW regarding what they need, or would you like me to bring that through into the WEDS discussion?
I think it would be appropriate to bring it through to the WEDS discussion.
If you just want to change that to an action item for me, and I'll report back.
Pat, sorry, Pat.
I'm unmuted now. On the 11th of December, there's two policies in there that will need to be updated. I think as far goes, we need to have a handle on all policies as to where they're sitting. And I just wondered if we could have attached a page. I know this will probably, Harry, you'll need to answer this, or Katrina, and Karen probably wants a say in this. But what I'm suggesting is that we have a list of all the policies, their due date, and the proposed date for their review. So that we can keep track of how many policies we're going to end up with in a bunch, which ones we might need to change around so that they come further up the rankings or anything like that. But if we could have a list of them all with those dates and then a comments column that officers can put in a comment as to urgency or non-urgency or nothing. I just thought that might be easier to follow than just one or two on an action report type thing.
That makes really good sense. Look at the whole rather than the sum of the parts. I think it's a very good idea, Pam.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. I think that Karen's done some initial work on that, but it wasn't quite clear when we actually needed to implement the policies. So just might need a bit of rejigging. Alex, thank you, Pam.
Yeah, also on the 11th of December 19 regarding risk to the council for increases in waste levies. I don't think that is actioned, because it's not just whether or not Bonnie Glen is available. It's more the cost to council and what we need to be doing to action an increased waste minimisation policy or spend due to the fact that they'll be quadrupling or times 10 over the next 5 years. So I think just saying Bonnie Glen is still open does not fix the problem.
Okay, no, that's fair. Let's leave that, reverse that and leave that open.
I think we did have some commentary around that in our fees and charges when we did that, at the fact that some of those would need to be going up on an annual basis as the increase comes through. But certainly, I think we need to be ahead of the game in this as to what it is and when and what it affects.
But I also don't think, Pam, that it's just about charges. It's about responsibly encouraging or dealing with waste. And I think the government's intention with regards to levy increases is purely to make us have this conversation.
Yeah. And also we need to look at the space in our transfer station to accommodate all the different styles of waste that are going to possibly need to be recycled or anything like that.
And if we refer back to the Martinborough Community Board, where there's a desire to open up a waste recycling centre, as Featherston have very successfully, to encourage that. That's one of our policies that we should be following.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Just as a point of clarification, this action is about assessing the risk, the reporting on actions to reduce solid waste, and those types of activities should come through the assets and services. So I think it's important to assess out, differentiate the action that relates to keeping councillors regularly updated on levies, changes, costs, waste minimisation. That's an assets and services role. And so your confidence about is that risk being managed through assets and services. It's just a point. I think that action is a bit of a blend of both. But I think we just need to, it's the risk that we're not on top of it.
So can we change that action plan to reflect what Harry has said, or take this one off and put a new one in to reflect what Harry has said, that we need to act, how we need to act as governance for?
Oh, look, I think it's okay, because the first words are assess the risk. It's just a reminder that the actions, and what we probably need to do is have a parallel action on the Assets and Services Committee. Once we've recruited a new solid waste officer, we'll be able to give the Assets and Services a lot more information, information on this. So I think the action is leave this one as it is, but we create a parallel action for Assets and Services.
That sounds like a good plan. Any other comments around the risk list, the action list? No? Okay. I have to apologise. I needed to do one more confirmation of minutes in the public excluded section, which I omitted to do. I apologise. So this is considering the public excluded minutes from the 11th of August. So do I have a mover that the public excluded minutes of the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on the 11th of August 21 are true and correct record? Can I have a mover for that? Thank you, Alex. And seconded by... Can I have a seconder? Oh, thank you, Garrett. All in favour? Thank you. That's carried. Thank you very much. I apologise about that.
Excuse me, Lee, could I, Madam Chair, could I ask, when we went through the apologies at the beginning, did we have Councillor Jepson in as an apology?
No, we didn't.
I messaged him to make sure he was okay, and he said that he had put an apology earlier to say that he wouldn't be available today. And can we add that in at this stage, please?
Yes. Did he send that to you, Suzanne?
I don't recall seeing it actually, but
no, he didn't say Suzanne, so I just need to sort that piece out with Suzanne.
Yeah. So in that case, can we have a seconder to accept the apology for Brian Jepson. Thank you, Alex. And all in favour? Okay, have you captured that, Suzanne?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, it's 11:05. So before we move into publicly excluded, I'm going to suggest we, what do you want, a 5 or 10 minute break? 10 minutes? Excellent. And so we'll reconvene at 11:15 and move into the next section. So thanks very much for your time.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, it would be easier if we actually move into public excluded right now, otherwise we need to leave the live streaming going.
Oh, okay, excellent. Rightio, not a problem. So, hang on a moment. So we'll, sorry about that. Just checking my papers. So we will now move into public excluded business. Do I have a mover to move into publicly excluded business to consider the operational risk register for the reasons as outlined in the agenda? Thank you, Garrick. Do I have a seconder, please? Seconder? Thank you, Alex. All of those in favour, please raise your hand. And those against, please raise your hand. So the motion is carried. So we'll now just have a pause and turn off the live stream.